Hello, what's up, friends? Patrick McFarland here of the Liberty Weekly podcast, coming at you with another Liberty Daily Vlog series. And this is kind of a new little series I'm doing where I can have little vlogs where I don't talk about the law. And I think it's really interesting. I can bring up little bite-sized points here. But today I wanted to talk a bit about Colin Kaepernick and something that I don't think people are really talking about when it comes to Colin Kaepernick. There have been a lot of misgivings, and you see the right being triggered as the right's basically the new social justice warriors, the social justice warriors of the right, getting triggered and burning their Nike clothing, and we're all having a big laugh about it. But there's a lot of libertarian points that could be brought up when it comes to the Colin Kaepernick debate. We all know, and I'll put it here. You can see what I'm looking at here. We all know that the NFL sold patriotism to, or excuse me, the Defense Department sold patriotism to the NFL. It wasn't until 2008 or 2009 that the Defense Department started paying football teams millions of dollars to have these patriotic displays go on before every game. It's like the Roman Colosseum and the bread and circuses. I don't even think the NFL is interesting anymore. I kind of stopped paying attention after the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl when I graduated from high school in 2011. But I really think this is a big wedge issue here, and this is not, both sides have it wrong. This is not about Black Lives Matter. It's not about patriotism either. And having this division be in place with Colin Kaepernick and having him sow this division is, I think, counterproductive, because on the one side, Colin Kaepernick is, Black Lives Matter is kind of the thing. It's Black Lives Matter. And, the right says, oh, all lives matter. And, you can't disrespect our troops and our police officers because you're just a thug and all this kind of shit. But what is really lost in the weeds is the fact that we have a police problem in this country, that we're living in a police state. We have militarized police officers walking all over the place, tasing little children, tasing grandmothers. These are stories that come out all the time, that we really have a problem with police brutality in this country. And it doesn't matter, and I'm not going to say all lives matter and take the right approach to it, but we have a problem with police in this country, and both sides are being detracted from the actual issue, which is that we have a police problem in this country. And it's really I think, sowing this division. I don't blame Nike for really jumping on this, because I think it's a genius marketing move. Most people just don't really care. You're going to get the people on the left that really support Colin Kaepernick, and you'll get a few triggered snowflakes on the right now that will be burning their Nike gear. But just to go through, I have done a lot of work on the problem of police brutality and this creeping police militarization in our country. And I will point everyone to a documentary that I did called, it was a Liberation Library series, my book review series, where I reviewed John W. Whitehead's book, The Emerging American Police State. And I document a whole bunch of it in this documentary. I think it's like 40 minutes long with clips and stuff. I did a lot of work on it. But also, Mance Rayder just had a really good interview with John W. Whitehead talking about this exact problem and how it's really been exacerbated. How I think in the 70s we had a couple hundred SWAT raids per year. Now we have more than 80,000 SWAT raids per year in this country. Radley Belko has done a lot of work on how the military-industrial complex, like when the military will test out these weapons and send them overseas and they're in the battlefield, but when those weapons get retired, they come back to the United States and they're given to police departments who will then use them, because when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you're given this equipment, you want to use it. You really do. And so we're getting these police raids where they're using SWAT team raids to serve search warrants, and just situations where the SWAT team, paramilitarized police, they just don't belong. And he kind of outlines that this is getting towards kind of a that in the next 30 years that they're gearing up for mass public disorder. And those are John W. Whitehead's words. So I don't have that pulled up because I didn't think I was going to talk about it. But I'll put that Mance Rayder interview in the show notes page, or the screen description page here, because I think it's super duper interesting. I'll put this story in as well, the Think Progress story about how the NFL sold patriotism to the U.S. military. Here's you get the lowdown on the Colin Kaepernick story if you really need it. I'll include this in the show notes page as well from the Chicago Trib. But here's an interesting parallel too that I really wanted to get into with this episode, with this little vlog, is this correlation between Pat Tillman, because I've seen a lot of conservatives say, oh, Colin Kaepernick is just a whiny little bitch. Pat Tillman is the real hero. And Pat Tillman was, he was a selfless NFL player that sacrificed his entire contract to go and join the military and do something noble. But what they don't tell you is that Pat Tillman's death was shrouded in mystery. And there's actually some evidence, and I'll put this link in the show notes page too, right here, that U.S. hero Pat Tillman thought Iraq war was a, quote, imperial folly. And I've heard this as well on Prof. CJ's podcast, where he was interviewing the Army grunt. And I'm creating all these show notes pages for myself, all these notes I have to put in. But interesting to document how Pat Tillman, there are signs that he was becoming disgruntled and did not really like what he was having to do in Iraq, and was realizing that it was all a farce. And as we know, Pat Tillman died through friendly fire, but his death itself is shrouded in kind of mystery. And take the conspiracy angle all you will with this. I can't say anything conclusively. There's just, as you'll read in these, this is a short little article here, but I'll just read it then. So, according to a new book, Tillman, who was killed by friendly fire in 2004 and hailed as an all-American hero by the former president, was disillusioned by Mr. Bush and his administration's, quote, illegal and unjust drive to war. In this book, Where Men Win Glory, The Odyssey of Pat Tillman by John Krakauer, the author relates the strong views of Tillman, who gave up his NFL football career to serve his country, and his brother Kevin, who joined the same Rangers unit. The war, quote, struck them as an imperial folly that was doing long-term damage to U.S. interests, Krakauer claims. Quote, the brothers lamented how easy it had been for Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld to bully Secretary of State Colin Powell, both the houses of Congress and the majority of the American people, into endorsing the invasion of Iraq. Tillman was held up by the administration as a hero, but it later emerged that the Pentagon had withheld the truth about the circumstances of his death. He was shot by fellow Rangers in an act described as, quote, gross negligence. So I guess you could get all conspiratorial and be like, oh, well, it's possible that the U.S. military found out Pat Tillman, who was this huge military football all-American icon, they found out he was disgruntled with the war, so they had him killed. Well, that's the worst case scenario, and I don't have any evidence to back that up. But I think even just the by the book story is enough to really pause and think. Gross negligence. So I just think it's funny that conservatives will point to Pat Tillman and say that he's this all-American icon and that he really deserves our praise and he's way better than Colin Kaepernick, which I don't give a fuck about Colin Kaepernick or football or anything. This is, like I said, just a wedge issue that is to drive people apart and detract them from the real story. And the real story is that this is not a black versus white issue. This isn't about our soldiers. It's not about protecting our police officers. This is about the fact that we have a police problem in the United States. This is not a conservative or a liberal issue, and conservatives, would probably frame it as a law and order issue. They would probably disagree with me, but I think it stands for itself by objective measures. Go and watch my documentary, Liberation Library 5, The Emerging American Police State. We have a police problem in this country. You'll see the meme, this is the standing army that the founding fathers warned about. Well, I document in here how Bernard Bailyn, in his very famous book, The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, documents the reasons why the colonists went to war. And one of the biggest ones was the standing army. So, it is very conservative and patriotic to be concerned about militarized police forces and police brutality. I don't know how else, you really won't have make a lot of leeway with conservatives on that issue, because the biggest thing that I've found that separates conservatives from libertarians is that love of police and that law and order bootlicking mindset. This mindset that, you know, oh, anarchy would be the worst. Warlords would take over, you know, as if, look around, technically we live in a state of anarchy right now, and warlords, because there is the UN now, so it's quasi-anarchy. Shut up, my cat, Timmy. But it's quasi-anarchy, but there's no one government that oversees all the countries of the world. So yeah, I think that... So yeah, that's just the fallacy of, oh, the warlords would take over. But I mean, look around you. The biggest warlord, the United States, has already won. We've already divided ourselves up into warlords. And I think that bodes kind of an interesting question as to, well, does anarchy always lead to a state? Because people really do desire their own servitude. I think that's pretty apparent. So then is the question, I don't think that makes anarchy not viable. I just think it really shows that, you know, states will develop. People desire states. I think that's an interesting problem that we always have to deal with as libertarians, because we desire no state. We desire freedom, a true state of freedom. So just a few interesting tidbits here about the Colin Kaepernick and, you know, conservatives who try and call up Pat Tillman to say that Colin Kaepernick is a whiny little bitch or something. I really don't care, honestly. I don't support Colin Kaepernick. I think, you know, there's the question of whether or not the NFL is actually a private entity or not, because they get so many subsidies from the government, and they're you know, they get taxpayer funds to build their stadium and everything. So should Colin Kaepernick have a First Amendment right? I don't know. I don't care. Police brutality is a problem. That's about it. That's the whole point. So I really appreciate you stopping by for this episode of the Liberty Daily Vlog. I'll try and include all those show notes that I breezed through. But check me out on bit.tube, is a new YouTube alternative. I'm uploading some things. That's at bit.tube/Liberty Weekly is how you get to me. Otherwise, check out my Patreon page. There's a new plug. There's a new bio up. There's a new tier level at friend of the show at $1 or more per month. Check out that Liberation Library episode, and also consider signing up for my email list, which I've revived, actually. So you can go to my website, click this link, or go to libertyweekly.net/email. But thanks for joining me for this Liberty Daily Vlog, and we'll catch you later.